I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to introduce myself last week. I'm Edward Cullen.
Bella.
Jacob, hello, biceps.
Just filling out, Bella.
You're just not good for me.
Don't.
I know what he did to you. I'll always be there for you, Bella. I'll never go away.
You're sort of beautiful.
He left you, Bella. He didn't want you anymore, remember?
Don't!
Goodbye, Jacob.
No, you don't speak for her.
Stop! You can't hurt each other without hurting me.
Marry me, Bella.
Eclipse was always about having to face the consequences of your choices. Fantasy love and reality love. There isn't one that's better than the other. But I wanted her to really have to look at what she was choosing and what she was giving up and put full weight on both of those choices before she made it.
Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice.
Eclipse starts at a sort of high note. Edward and Bella are happy and coming down off of the sort of traumatic experience that they had in Italy.
No, please, please!
I'm still being hunted by vampires, but the biggest problem in my life is being able to admit to myself and acknowledge that there are different levels of loving someone, and I'm totally in love with my best friend.
Hey, it's Jake. Leave a message.
But just not as much as my real, true love, who obviously is Edward.
Marry me.
No.
Because Edward has solidified the relationship for her, and in her eyes, she gets some control back.
Change me.
Bella is completely determined to become a vampire and have Edward change her, and Edward's still reluctant to that, which makes things, in a lot of ways, more difficult.
While Bella is willing to devote her life to him, she's got some weird issues with marriage because her mom got married and it didn't really work out, but they want exactly the same thing from each other. They have different ways of expressing it.
Edward constantly overthinks everything, and is this right, is that right? And his personality swings back and forth from the beginning, where he's very overprotective and he goes too far, and then he swings back too far the other way.
Sorry I let this go on for so long.
He has 17-year-old guy emotions, being jealous of other guys who fancy his girlfriend.
As we get deeper into the story, Jacob and Bella start to, reconnect again.
Jacob has this twofold mission. One is to save her from the monster, and the other is to make her see that she loves him, because he knows that she does. He can tell. It's not just a friendship thing between the two of them. She keeps having this urge to take care of him and to go and see him again and to make sure that he's happy without ever realizing what that means.
You need to know that I'm in love with you. And I want you to choose me instead of him.
She's keeping Jacob at arm's length.
I thought you understood.
And it's the hardest thing for her to do because she's definitely betraying true feelings for him.
Edward?
If you ever touch her against her will again,
Don't do this
she's
here.
not
Don't-
sure what she wants.
Don't do this
Let me
here.
give you a clue. Wait for her to say the words.
Fine. And she will.
Edward has to come to terms with Jacob and Bella's relationship quite a lot throughout the movie.
Edward would have been completely within an appropriate behavior level to say to Belle, I really don't want you to spend so much time with Jacob. Not because I'm afraid for your safety, because it makes me uncomfortable.
Jacob is Bella's best friend, and he's there for comfort.
Edward's always on the back foot. He's not up to the same speed as Jacob and Bella, because they're having a kind of normal, natural relationship. And he really wants to sort of be like Jacob and Bella as well, and so he wants to kind of have everything.
And it's a very hurtful thing for him, but at the same time, he knows that that's probably the right thing for her. And so he's caught between this rock and a hard place of wanting to be with Bella and wanting her to have the best life possible.
You wouldn't have to change for me, Bella. Or say goodbye to anybody. I can give you more than him.
Easy, guys, easy. Let's take it down a notch.
And so for her, it's looking at her mortal life from all the most important angles. Make her look at her family and look at what she was going to lose and look at Jacob, and he was the embodiment of a human life.
That should have been our first kiss.
And that for me was the most heartbreaking part of the book, knowing at the time she's gonna have to give it up. I was sobbing when I wrote it, as knowing that she was giving it up.
August 13th.
Yeah. It's a month before my birthday.
she's able to, by the end of it at least, admit to herself that she loves Jacob, but is making a decision for her life, which will ultimately benefit her.
Even the right choices have consequences, and not making a choice has a consequence. And that's, for me, one of the biggest things about growing up. And Bella has to become a grown-up and start dealing with the consequences of her actions.
Chosen my life. I'm gonna start living it.
That's something that I love about the series, and that's something that I believe in. I think you have to do what is good for you, and that's really hard. You can't make decisions to please everybody.
She has to face the fact that she has broken Jacob's heart. And she knows that she's hurt herself too by allowing them to be more involved. If she'd realized that Jacob was more than just a friend to her, she would have had to cut that relationship off earlier and save both of them some pain.
Hi, I'm Jacob. We used to make mud pies when we were little.
Right, no, I remember.
It's funny because I get asked a lot about how, Jacob responded to this or that, and he really wouldn't have done anything differently. If he knew the ending, he still wouldn't have been Jacob if he didn't try, if he didn't put his whole heart into trying to do what he thought was right. And so he did.
I didn't have quite the same upbringing as my adopted siblings.
Well, Eclipse was a great chance for me to finally get to tell about some of the other members of the Collins clan.
Jasper's backstory, which has a lot of gnarly bits to it.
You could make an entire movie out of just Jasper's story, so it was quite the challenging exercise to take it down to just the couple scenes that I had.
Jasper, all along we've known that he's sort of this serious, tortured person who has a hard time being around Bella and all of that, but we don't know why and where he came from.
In the book, Jasper's story is so complex and goes into so much detail. It's a wonderful exploration of a character that we followed sort of in the background for several books. And to actually get into, in detail, his background is really interesting.
Jasper was interned back in the Civil War era. He was actually the youngest major in the Texas Cavalry.
He was actually a colonel at a very young age, 18, I think.
He's always held himself in this way where I've always gone like, when I saw the other film, why is he kind of always doing this thing? And it's because it's the way a soldier holds himself. And of course, now 2 films of him holding himself this way pay off with him being a soldier.
What's your name, soldier?
Major Jasper Whitlock, ma'am.
He came across 3 beautiful ladies who happened to be vampires, and they seduced and turned him into a vampire.
You'd better do it, Maria. I can never stop once I've started.
Maria's the vampiress that turned Jasper back in the Civil War, and she was kind of the head of this newborn army that she was creating.
Maria realizes early in that he's this tremendous asset, and so he doesn't have a much shorter life the way most newborns do, and she keeps him around, and his life is always about violence and war and blood.
She appointed Jasper as kind of her right-hand man and also her lover.
Kind of similar to the way that Victoria is manipulating Riley, he was manipulated by Maria in the same sense, and she had him create a vampire army of newborns.
Maria was using Jasper for Jasper's special talents, which is to manipulate emotions, and because he was able to calm down the newborns and train them.
He had the ongoing process of training them and sending them into battle and then killing them once they weren't newborns anymore.
Jasper ends up finally breaking away from her and finding a more peaceful world.
Never have to be that again.
But he is never entirely comfortable in that peaceful world because he's spent hundreds of years in the other one.
Jasper has a definitely dark and checkered past that haunts him every day.
Jasper's story helps Bella to realize that someone else is Victoria's puppet, and she comes to that by Jasper telling his story of how he became someone's puppet.
Is there anything I can do?
Your presence alone, your scent, will distract the newborns.
Jasper understands how to fight this battle, and it was fun having him have a chance to take the lead.
He finally gets to explain why he is how he is.
It's nice to finally be able to delve into his backstory and really what makes him tick, and really to explain a lot of the nuances I've tried to put into my performance as playing Jasper Hale.
The rest of the world is going to find out exactly who Rosalie is after this movie. We get to explore her backstory a lot, which is great.
You learn a lot about her past and why she feels the way she feels about turning Bella into a vampire or having her choose that for herself.
Rosalie is sort of projecting her own feelings about how she went through the whole process of changing onto her.
Bella, I envy you.
I started to wonder about, what would make her feel this way about this girl, and how would her history have shaped this?
Stop it. Come back.
Royce? Royce, honey.
Rosalie's story was always a big part of her character for me. When I was first writing Twilight, Rosalie didn't have much of a personality.
For the people who have read the books, there's an immense amount of love for my character, but for those who have just watched the first film, I sort of come off as being, just a bitchy sister.
Perfect. Her backstory was sort of developed in the process of her relation to Bella.
For a while, Bella wasn't worth her time, and she was sort of just an annoyance. And now, she realizes that this might be a permanent element in her family.
And so in Eclipse, finally we get a chance to tell the story, and I was glad. I wrote Eclipse before Twilight came out, but by the time Eclipse came out, everyone's like, what's with Rosalie?
Rosalie's story really tells us why she is the angry character that she is.
But nobody's life is perfect.
Mine was. She was engaged to a man back in the 1930s.
She had a very shallow, happy human life where a lot of her life was about her looks and about being popular and being wanted and not about very many serious things. Here she found this man who was handsome and rich and everything was perfect, and this is how it's supposed to look. And so she got herself in a situation with a very dangerous man and ended up being murdered by him.
Right now we're in downtown Vancouver. It's about 4:20 in the morning, and we're doing a scene with Nikki Reed, the lovely Nikki Reed. Where she's my lovely fiance, and I grab her and introduce her to some of my friends in a rather nasty, lascivious way.
And action. Rose! Rose! Hey, come over here.
Him and his friends abused her in a really brutal way and left her to die.
I'll see you tomorrow. So
She had an incredibly violent, brutal death.
Come back here. Do as I say. Come here.
She's pissed. She's pissed at the world. It wasn't her time. She didn't choose this.
Come here. Stop! Hey, good!
Carlisle smelled the blood, and he turned her into a vampire.
She becomes very vengeful in some ways.
Action!
I'm looking forward to shooting the revenge.
When Rosalie finally tells Bella her story, it's kind of a warning, but not in an angry way. It's in, you don't yet realize what you might miss.
You have a choice. I didn't. None of us did, but you do, and you're choosing wrong.
It's just the first time that they've talked. Bella and Rosalie actually speak to each other for the first time in a logical, reasonable way.
Rosalie just thinks it's too much to give up, and she's trying to give Bella the chance that she wasn't given.
For a second, she's willing to offer her a piece of really important advice, and most of the time people do that by telling a story about themselves.